In this video, we're going to be giving you an update on Lana and David's relationship and digging into all the strange and uncomfortable things that are going on. Listen, David's clearly a clever guy. He's done very well for himself. He's wealthy, owns multiple houses, drove a Lamborghini, is estimated to be worth around $2.5 million. And look, I'm just going to say it, he's not the worst looking 60-year-old out there. We've seen a lot more desperate 90 Day Fiancé cast members. But something's broken, something's just not right. Like, why is he willing to spend over $100,000 messaging Lana and other Ukrainian women strictly through this one dating site and paying for every message he sends? Why is he willing to turn a blind eye to being stood up so many times? We're talking repeatedly, over and over again, and yet maintain that the love is real. And more importantly, what's the real deal with Lana? There's so many rumours flying around about her, from claims that she's already married to rumours that she was paid to appear on the show, and even that she might just be an actress. What's the truth here? What's really going on? And are David and Lana still together? Okay, so let's start with the facts. Here's what we know for sure, because in this story, facts are a rarity. There's just not too many of them. David first met Lana on a dating site 7 years ago. The pair communicated strictly through the site, with David having to pay for every message he sent. In the 5,000 plus hours that they'd been speaking, David had racked up expenses of over $100,000, not including the money that he'd sent her privately, which he claims was around $3,000 or $4,000. Now, here's the thing. As shady as Lana appears to be, and don't you worry, we'll get to that in a second, David isn't whiter than white. I mean, for a start, he admits to dating over 100 Ukrainian women in total over all the years, spending over $300,000 on dating sites and vacations to the country.
How much would you say the total cost has been?
I mean, to be honest, it's probably $250,000 to $300,000 or so.
As he admitted on the show, he's been engaged twice, both times to American women, but for the past 15 years, he's only dated Ukrainians, proposing to 2 of them, but being turned down both times. In fact, he's been doing this for so long now that it predates dating sites, and his first trips to Ukraine were to meet women he'd picked out from catalogs.
Before the chat sites. There was no chat, there was no communication with girls, there were just pictures.
Okay, and so you'd kind of flip through like a photo album and look at who you're interested in.
Yes.
And so when David first popped up on our screens talking about how he was planning to sell his houses and buy an RV to travel around the country with Lana, a lady he'd never actually met, alarm bells started ringing. And you can understand why so many internet detectives, real detectives, and all of David's friends had their doubts. After all, forget the fact that Lana's half his age. More concerningly, this is a woman that had had profiles on 7 or 8 different dating sites under different names and had arranged to meet David multiple times in the past, but then never showed up. And yet, despite that, like a lovesick puppy, David remained obsessed, continuing to spend money talking to her and refusing to acknowledge that she was fake. So you can understand his relief when he finally met her on the show. Don't forget, the first time he and the camera crew had gone to Ukraine, he'd been stood up at the train station, he'd been stood up at a restaurant, and then he'd driven 300 miles to what he thought was her home, only to find out she'd given him a wrong address. And this was all after numerous other times that she'd stood him up, not captured on the show, including a cruise that he'd paid for that she didn't show up for. But this time was different. This was the last chance saloon, or so he claimed. There he was in his leather jacket at 11 AM in the morning, waiting by the Independence Monument. He'd wanted to meet her a few days earlier, but she had her nephew's hockey match to attend.
Oh, a message from Lana. She's busy with hockey games this weekend. She's saying now that we can't meet until Monday.
Sorry, David, you may have flown thousands of miles and spent a fortune, but priorities, my friend. And there she was. Hallelujah! Miracle of all miracles, she finally showed up. But hold on a minute, was that really Lana? Why now? Why'd she suddenly appeared after so many years of ghosting him? What was her motive? And if she'd refused to meet David until the Monday because of her nephew's hockey match, why did TLC have footage interviewing her over the weekend? If she had had time for interviews, surely she could have set aside 10 minutes to meet the poor guy. And yet there she was, on a call with her friend, talking about all of the gifts that this rich American would hopefully give her.
Он хорошо зарабатывает.
Прикольно, может, он тебе какие-то подарки привезет.
Надеюсь.
And that's where the conspiracy theory sprung into full gear. Some claimed that she was already married. Others claimed TLC had hired a lookalike to appear on the show. And yet others had a theory that she was paid to show up either by TLC or by the dating website that she was on so that they didn't look bad. After all, we're talking about a site generating a lot of money on the premise that they've got hot Eastern European ladies looking to meet older American men. I mean, imagine the bad PR if she didn't show and if potentially the whole site came under the spotlight. They wouldn't want that. Surely it'd be worth paying her to keep the illusion alive. And one of the wilder conspiracy theories, and this is probably my favourite, some of them claimed that the real person David had been messaging wasn't the Lana in the photo, but rather the restaurant owner from one of the dates that she didn't show up on. If you remember, that was a lady who'd been all too happy to sell him champagne and then take his roses.
Ничего особенного вообще. Цветы жалко и все.
Now that whole theory hinged on the fact that apparently it's commonplace for totally different people to be writing the messages on these dating sites, not the person in the actual photo. And as you recall, throughout the awkward interactions with translation apps, because oh yeah, Lana didn't speak English, David was keen to escalate things and get romantic, whereas Lana seemed to cringe every time they so much as hugged.
Okay.
Now, as the viewers, the last we saw of the couple, David had gifted Lana a new phone so that they could communicate privately without having to pay through the website. And in a romantic gesture to rival Romeo and Juliet, he got down on one knee to propose at the airport with his cubic zirconia engagement ring.
I'm actually looking for something less than a diamond. Maybe cubic zirconia or...
Cubic zirconia?
Well, because they shine, I guess.
I mean, there's all sorts of questions that ring raises in its own right. Like, if you know deep down in your heart this is real, do you not buy a diamond ring? Especially as he's not exactly short of money. But hey, let's just put that aside for now. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. What's happened to their relationship since that engagement? Are they still engaged? Well, not quite. You see, when David got back to the States, he tried to chat with Lana on the phone that he'd given her, but get this, she claimed that her nails were too long to use the phone and they had to chat back using the dating website. When asked about this, David defended her, claiming that it's a legal requirement, the IMBRA law to be precise. David, and presumably Lana, claim that they can't communicate privately between themselves because they need to abide by this law, which is also, conveniently, written into the terms and conditions of the dating site. Of course, lots of people have pointed out that that law simply isn't applicable in his case, and it's being wrongly interpreted. It's actually a law designed to protect immigrants entering the US from domestic abuse. But David's having none of it. And hey, call me a cynic, but all the evidence definitely seems to appear as though Lana's financially motivated to keep David on that site, thereby racking up more and more expenses in messaging her. But David's adamant that's not the case, and he claims Lana makes zero money from the site itself. And not surprisingly, Lana's not happy with TLC and how she's been portrayed on the show. In fact, she came out all guns blazing when she held a recent Q&A session on Instagram. In perfect English, which is quite unusual since most of Lana's segments on the show had to be translated, Lana revealed that 90% of her time on 90 Day Fiancé was scripted. Fans asked her about her engagement and the ghostings, and she revealed that both situations were completely made up by producers and that she just had to play along. So if her claims are to be believed, There was no engagement and there were no ghostings. It was all made up for the cameras. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I know TLC have in the past been accused of scripting stuff, but making it all up? I'm not sure. That seems a step too far, surely. Now, Lana also explained why she refused to appear on the tell-all episode, claiming that she was no longer prepared to play along with all the, quote, stupidity. And unsurprisingly, David seems to accept and support all that she says. During a Halloween IG stream in which he wore red contact lenses as part of his costume, David had some very interesting things to say about the show and reality TV in general.
I can't talk to you guys and tell you everything that was going on or why it was happening the way it was because of contracts. So half my brain and half my mouth is tied behind my back. Well, what you saw and what actually happened are two totally different things. The show didn't show anything good on my side, so they had their own narrative for what they wanted to show. There's nothing real about reality TV.
So where are the couple now? If the engagement was fake, are they still in a relationship? Well, things seem to be a bit more complicated on that front too. Let me explain. During the tell-all episode, aired in June 2020, David revealed that they were no longer engaged. However, a few months later in October, in the Halloween IG livestream that he recorded, he revealed that they were still trying for a K1 visa, but that the Ukrainian embassy was closed due to the pandemic. And then, the most recent report, on his episode of 90 Day Fiancé Bears All in February of 2021, he revealed that they're not together, but he can't answer if they've broken up. He says they're not as serious as they were, but that he's still holding out to see if the relationship will work. In the meantime, David has now retired from his job and lost a lot of weight. He's looking good. Presumably, with all that free time on his hands, he might be able to indulge in some of his favourite hobbies, like riding his unicycle, flying airplanes, yep, he's a qualified pilot, and, I don't know, talking to Eastern European ladies on dating sites maybe? He's not yet purchased his RV or sold his houses, but he's still holding on to the dream that one day he and Lana will travel the States together in his RV and that they'll start a YouTube channel documenting it all. And as for Lana, well, she works as a fitness instructor and also works in law enforcement. She's still on multiple dating websites, including one in which she goes by the alias Juicy Sveta, and is open about the fact that she's communicated and even met up with numerous other foreign men. She's also selling cameo videos in, wait for it, seemingly perfect English. Yep, just one more red flag and one more thing that doesn't quite add up about this all. But hey, who knows? This might not be the last we hear of these two. David has hinted that he might be back on the show, so we'll have to wait and see how this one pans out. Some fans have expressed the hope that maybe he and fellow cast member Yolanda might make a good couple, given that they've got quite a lot of things in common. Like catfishing partners, they're both from Las Vegas, and they're both similar ages. But given how much time and money he's invested in the relationship with Lana so far, and given his preference for younger Ukrainian girls, it seems unlikely that David's going to give up the dream of marrying Lana anytime soon. Whether or not Lana feels the same way, well, that's open for debate.
My fiance.
Okay.
I guess time will tell. Hey, if you've made it this far to the end of the video, do me a favour, hit that like button, show your support, and consider subscribing for lots more 90 Day Fiancé content. Thank you for watching, catch you on the next video.